Sometimes, the world teeters on the edge of a cliff, not because of a political decision or a grand scheme, but because of something far more absurd. Not a missile, not an enemy invasion, not a calculated act of aggression. It's the story of an error, an alarm, and a system that completely misunderstood reality. This is the true, declassified story of the night. A simple, almost comical mistake nearly triggered the unimaginable World War III. By the late 1960s, the Cold War wasn't just a political rivalry. It was a state of permanent high-stakes paranoia. The United States and the Soviet Union were locked in a terrifying dance of suspicion, where every signal mattered, every radar blip was intensely analyzed, and every unexplained movement could be the prelude to global annihilation. There was absolutely no room for hesitation, no time for second-guessing. A few minutes could be the difference between survival and a nuclear winter. To counter the threat of a surprise Soviet attack over the North Pole, the United States had built a colossal shield of technology and steel, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, or NORAD. Its mission was brutally simple: detect an incoming nuclear strike within minutes, and respond without a moment's delay. The system was designed for speed, for certainty, and for overwhelming retaliation. In the cold early hours of October 25, 1967, at Vogue Field Air National Guard Base in Wisconsin, a security guard was making his rounds. Suddenly he spotted movement near the perimeter fence, a shadowy figure. In the tense atmosphere of the Cold War, his training kicked in immediately. He suspected sabotage, a Soviet Special Forces team, perhaps, sent to neutralize the base before a main attack. Following procedure to the letter, he raised his weapon and fired a warning shot into the air. Then, he activated the intrusion alarm. The system worked exactly as it was designed to. In fact, it worked too well. What the guard didn't know, what no one could have possibly known at that moment, was that the intruder wasn't a saboteur, it wasn't a soldier, it wasn't even human. It was a large, curious black bear, wandering out of the Wisconsin woods. But the system didn't know the difference. The bear, likely startled by the guard, clumsily triggered the perimeter sensors. And this is where a simple mistake in wiring turned a local wildlife encounter into a global crisis. Those perimeter sensors, due to a configuration error nobody had caught, were incorrectly cross-wired directly into the highest-level alert systems. Within seconds, the signal bypassed all local checks and balances. It didn't just alert the base commander, it screamed directly to Strategic Air Command headquarters and other air bases across the United States. The message that flashed across their screens was unambiguous and utterly terrifying. It wasn't a warning of a possible intrusion. The signal was interpreted as confirmation that the base was under direct attack, a key precursor to a full-scale Soviet nuclear strike. The system's logic was simple. If a nuclear-capable base is being overrun, the main attack must already be underway. Across the country, the response was immediate and automatic. The protocols for nuclear war began to unfold. On runways from North Dakota to Massachusetts, the crews of B-52 Stratofortress bombers, each one carrying a payload of devastating nuclear weapons, were scrambled. Pilots sprinted to their aircraft. The deafening roar of jet engines shattered the pre-dawn silence as they were fired up, preparing for immediate takeoff. These weren't drills. For the men in those cockpits, this was real. They were minutes, perhaps seconds, away from their fail-safe points, the last invisible line before they would proceed to their targets in the Soviet Union. All of this was happening without a single enemy missile actually being in the air. But inside the dimly lit command centers, deep underground, a few sharp-eyed officers noticed something deeply unsettling, a profound contradiction. The alarms were blaring, insisting that a nuclear attack was in progress. Yet, the vast, powerful screens of the long-range radar systems, the primary eyes of NORAD, were completely blank. There were no incoming missile tracks, no telltale heat signatures of Soviet launches detected by satellites. There was no external confirmation whatsoever. No chatter, no military movements, nothing to support the idea that the world was ending. The system was screaming attack confirmed, but reality was screaming nothing is happening. For several agonizingly long minutes, the United States stood on the absolute brink of launching a full-scale retaliatory nuclear strike in response to an attack that simply did not exist. The entire machinery of war was spooled up, ready to unleash hell, based on a single, faulty signal. The fate of hundreds of millions of people rested on a knife's edge. Then, in that moment of supreme crisis, something incredible happened. Someone hesitated. Someone in the chain of command, faced with the machine's absolute certainty and the unnerving silence from the radars, made a courageous choice. They questioned the signal. They ordered a pause. The launch sequence was halted, just moments before it would have become irreversible. An immediate, frantic investigation began. How could the system declare a full-scale attack when all other indicators showed peace? Officers at Volk Field were contacted. They drove out to the perimeter fence, flashlights cutting through the darkness, expecting to find evidence of a firefight or a sophisticated enemy infiltration. What they discovered was both completely absurd and utterly terrifying. They found the bear, a single, frightened black bear, and they found a miswired sensor. A simple human error in a complex system had created a phantom war. The entire incident was immediately classified at the highest levels. There were no press releases, no public explanations, no congressional hearings. Admitting the truth would have been catastrophic for public confidence. It would have meant acknowledging that the intricate multi-billion-dollar system designed to protect the world was, in fact, dangerously flawed. It would have meant revealing that global survival depended on fragile, human-made machines that could fail in the most ridiculous ways imaginable, unable to distinguish between a woodland creature and the apocalypse. For decades, almost no one outside a tiny circle of military officials knew how close the world had come to a nuclear catastrophe because of a bear. That night, World War III did not begin. It was averted not by a treaty, not by diplomacy, but because a few individuals chose to think critically instead of blindly obeying a machine's command. They trusted their human judgment over the automated alarm. But the story leaves us with a deeply unsettling question. This is one of the few incidents that has been declassified. If it happened once, and we only know about it by chance, how many other times did the world come perilously close to the brink without anyone ever finding out? How many other bears, or flocks of geese, or solar flares have been misinterpreted by our automated guardians? History often tells us that wars begin with grand speeches, decisive battles, and bold political decisions. But the hidden truth is that sometimes they almost begin with a simple error, a crossed wire, a glitch in the code. These are the real moments that nearly erased humanity from the map. The story is hidden between the lines of our official histories. If you want to understand these critical, forgotten moments that have shaped our world, subscribe to the channel, because history doesn't always send a clear warning and the next alarm might not be false. Thanks for watching.